Hello and welcome to the VISTA Sponsor Orientation. This session is the first glimpse of the information and resources needed to carry out your new role as VISTA Project Director. We're extremely happy to have you with us today as we love the work that we do, and today you'll hear from two CNCS staff members throughout the presentation. My name is Eric Powell, and I'm an AmeriCorps VISTA Training Specialist at the Corporation for National and Community Service, and I'm located in Washington, D.C.
Hi everyone, I'm Mallory Davis and I'm a Kentucky State Program Officer with the Office of Field Liaison at the Corporation for National and Community Service, and I'm located in Louisville, Kentucky. Throughout our presentation, we may be joined by a few other CNCS State Office and VISTA colleagues assisting us with the chat panel and working together to provide you essential information and answer your questions.
So now that you know a little bit about us, and you saw on the previous screen we're both AmeriCorps VISTA alum, proud alum, let's learn a little bit about who's with us today, because this may also help you make connections with people geographically near you or who are working at similar organizations. So take a quick moment and type your answers in the chat panel to these three quick questions. What's the name of your organization? Where are you located? City and state. And then what's your favorite summertime activity? So as you type, we'll go ahead and quickly answer these questions. You already know that Mallory and I both work for CNCS, and you know where we're located. I'll say that my favorite summertime activity is probably just going for a long walk outside and enjoying the sun and the flowers. Mallory, how about you?
I think my favorite summertime activity might be drinking iced coffee. Louisville has lots of great local coffee shops, and it gives me energy to get through the warm summer days.
I could use some coffee right about now, even though I don't like coffee, but the energy would be a good thing. And it seems like a lot of other people enjoy outdoor activities. Baseball season, someone in Austin, Texas likes swimming, people from Georgia, Oakland, California. We've got sponsors from all over the country who enjoy doing a variety of things. And again, as you see what's in the chat panel, more is coming in. Definitely if you see someone that is near you or working on a similar project, be sure to connect with them, because that's part of the other reason for having these orientations, is to help you connect with each other. So thank you for that very short activity. I am now going to turn it over to Mallory for a few more introductory comments.
Thanks, Eric. While this information is most relevant for VISTA project directors, we have designed this session so that everyone involved in the management and oversight of the VISTA project will gain valuable knowledge from reviewing this content. We recommend that VISTA project directors, project and site supervisors, and authorized representatives all review the content so your organization will be well prepared to manage a VISTA program. In our development, we're assuming that you are relatively new or even brand new to VISTA. In developing today's presentation, we're assuming that participants have looked at a number of materials ahead of time. These include VISTA 101 and 201, and these materials are stored on the VISTA campus. Just a quick idea. If you started but did not finish. As you type your responses, please know we create these resources to best prepare you for being a VISTA sponsor and to give you access to information you may need while in your role.
Thanks, Mallory. So far it looks like a couple of people are in progress working on them, or they have not yet completed them. Some people are working on them, a few are done, but it looks like the large majority have started, but they're still working on completing a few final things and making sure they can get through the content, which is completely fine. We certainly recommend that you have done them before this webinar, but if you have not yet completed them, and if you're still in progress, we do want to say it's really in your best interest to complete them as soon as possible, especially if you're a newer VISTA sponsor, because it'll help best situate you for success as a VISTA sponsor. So with that, let's go ahead and jump into our presentation. We'd like to start with an agenda to show you where we're going, because this session will focus on key pieces that will give you the initial information that you need to ensure your success as a VISTA project. So today we're going to cover where you start, resources and people that can help you get your bearings in the world of AmeriCorps. In the big picture, we'll talk about an overview of CNCS, including the structure of national service, CNCS programs, our chain of communication, and the core principles of AmeriCorps VISTA. In speaking of core responsibilities, we'll mention your responsibilities relating to VISTA member support and project management, as well as important governing documents for our work together. We'll give you some keys to success, which includes tips, training, tools, and resources that are available, as well as a sense of what success looks like for the VISTA program. We'll give you some next steps showing you where to go next on your learning path. And finally, we'll wrap up, closing out our session today and allowing time for questions and answers. We mentioned earlier that there's a handout panel available, and again we mentioned that there's a one-page acronym list that you can download. Now I'll say don't yet download the answers. This is an activity for you to do during the webinar as we discuss various acronyms that we widely use and we want you to know. The list does have some various obvious acronyms, such as VISTA, which we hope that all of you know what that acronym is by now, but it also has some acronyms that only the seasoned VISTA project sponsors will know. Your goal is to fill in all the blanks by the end of this webinar. And at the end of this webinar, you can download the answer sheet in the handouts panel to see how you did. We did intentionally put it in a Microsoft Word document so that you can add additional acronyms as you see fit. We know that acronyms are a good place to start because you'll see and hear them frequently used by us and by your CNCS State Office staff, and they'll help you better become acquainted with our work.
If you are a new VISTA sponsor, it can be overwhelming to figure out what you need to know, where to find information, and who to reach out to for help. Here are a few key resources for you, and we'll refer to these throughout the presentation today. As a result of our presentation, we want to be sure that everyone on today's webinar will learn a core set of terms for VISTA project management. This graphic shows where to find information on a variety of topics. The resources on the screen will connect you to websites and resources, such as the CNCS website, which will connect you to various items, including publications. You should create a VISTA Campus account if you have not done so already, and review the VISTA Sponsor Handbook. Check out other VISTA sponsor and supervisor information that's available. eGrants, for instance, contains information about your application, VISTA assignment descriptions, reporting, and other topics. The resources on the screen now will connect you to people and regulations as you seek support and guidance. The National Service Hotline is who you contact with eGrants issues, questions about VISTA member pay and relocation benefits, and cost share billing. You would contact your CNCS state office for information about project compliance, issues with VISTA members, changing and approving VADs, and anything else project related. It's important for you to know what resources are available to you and where they are, so that you can also obtain the support you need in your VISTA project. These links and more are available in your VISTA Sponsor Resource Guide. And as a reminder, you can find a link to the Sponsor Resource Guide in the Handouts panel. Along with getting a handle on the written materials that support you and your VISTA project, I want to underscore the importance of establishing communication expectations with your staff, VISTA members, sub-site staff, and CNCS. One way to avoid unforeseen issues and complications during the VISTA year is to establish a solid communication chain. In this task, your top resource will be your CNCS state office. The CNCS state office is able to provide a lot of support and also direct you to key tools and resources. Technical assistance from the CNCS state office can take many forms. For instance, we can provide technical support for things like member recruitment, training, reporting, and the other things you're responsible for. And we can offer support for you in member management and challenges. For VISTA members and supervisors with questions or concerns, you, as the VISTA sponsor, are the first-line resource. For questions relating to benefits, you can direct your VISTA member to the VISTA Member Support Unit, the VISTA Member Handbook, and other resources on the VISTA campus. Depending on how your project is structured, it might be the case that you're the main point of contact for members and supervisors. If it's a question that you're not able to address, then you would contact your CNCF state office. Your CNCF state office has access to other departments and units at CNCF in the event they need additional input. In addition to the resources included on the VISTA Sponsor Resource Guide, we want to highlight some key contacts and information that we want to be sure you know about. On the top of the list is your CNCF state office. They're there to help ensure you have the tools, resources, and knowledge you need to lead a successful VISTA project. The VISTA Sponsor Outreach and Recruitment page referenced here should be one of the first places you go because it contains information about recruitment, marketing, fact sheets, and much more. Much of the material available on this page is print ready, so be sure to check it out. The VISTA campus is filled with helpful tools and resources. You can find the member handbook and sponsor handbook there, as well as a variety of courses to help you through the life of your project. There's also a supervisor forum where you can have a dialogue with other supervisors from around the country. Many of the resources highlighted on the resource guide point you to the VISTA campus. Be sure to create a supervisor account on the VISTA campus. Otherwise, you won't be able to access everything referenced on the sponsor resource guide. The National Service Hotline offers support to you as well as your members and supervisors. They can help with common e-grants questions, research passwords, etc., but they can also escalate calls to the e-grants help desk. Be sure to keep the e-grant support link handy, but remember, you can also call the National Service Hotline. The National Service Hotline will also escalate calls to the VISTA Member Support Unit, or the VMSU. The VMSU can troubleshoot member issues related to the living allowance or relocation payment issues, and can answer questions about benefits such as the Education Award. In addition, check out the last website for gear and materials. The website is pubs.nationalservice.gov, and on this site you can find things like posters and brochures. The resources are free, and they may prove useful to you to assist in recruiting, talking about the VISTA program, and more. Since you may get questions from VISTA members, and you may want to know for yourself, VISTA members who successfully complete all their pre-work and submit their oath form correctly receive an email within their first couple weeks of service. The email contains instructions on how to order specific free gear we provide them, which includes a VISTA polo, a t-shirt, a lapel pin, a tote bag, a journal, and a water bottle. These items are restricted to only VISTA members, and they must be ordered by the members themselves using the specific instructions they're sent. However, there are lots of other materials and resources that you as a sponsor can order on the website.
So we talked briefly about VISTA 101, and I know some of you are in progress of completing it or haven't completed it yet. But in that tutorial, you learn a lot about VISTA, its mission to empower communities, to find solutions to eliminating poverty, and you learn about how VISTA members specifically build capacity. If you have not yet completed VISTA 101 and VISTA 201, again you can refer to the VISTA Sponsor Resource Guide in the Handouts panel and complete them on the VISTA campus. But let's take a minute now to discuss a few key principles that are central to the VISTA program. The Corporation for National and Community Service, or CNCS, strengthens and improves lives, communities, and fosters civic engagement through service and volunteering. As the nation's largest grant maker in support of service and volunteering, CNCS engages Americans of all ages and backgrounds in service to their communities each year through Senior Corps, AmeriCorps, and other programs. As you probably know, CNCS was created in 1993, and it engages more than 5 million Americans every year in improving communities through service. CNCS supports service at national, state, and local levels with a variety of service opportunities. I'll let Mallory now take a minute to dive a little bit deeper into the work that CNCS does by discussing CNCS's program areas.
Thanks, Eric. Under that broad mission of CNCS, there are two main programming areas, Senior Corps and AmeriCorps. Senior Corps was created in 1965 and includes 3 different programs to engage and serve senior adults in the U.S. Individuals who are 55 and older can join the RSVP, or the Retired Senior Volunteer Program, the Foster Grandparent Program, or the Senior Companion Program. AmeriCorps was created in 1994, and over 1 million members have contributed over 1 billion service hours across America. As you can see, there are 3 different AmeriCorps programs: AmeriCorps State and National, AmeriCorps NCCC, and AmeriCorps VISTA. CNCS state offices administer VISTA and Senior Corps programs with your support. In Kentucky, for instance, the CNCS state office oversees 11 VISTA projects with about 137 VISTA members. They also oversee 21 Senior Corps programs that manage over 5,400 volunteers. And we're just one of the many examples of CNCS state offices and the programs involved. Next, we'll turn our attention to the history of VISTA.
The VISTA program has a very rich history. In 1964, President Lyndon B. Johnson declared a war on poverty, and he signed the Economic Opportunity Act. This act created Volunteers in Service to America, which we know as VISTA, and other programs to combat poverty. VISTA is authorized under the Domestic Volunteer Service Act of 1973, as amended. The DVSA is a statute, and statutes define the legal boundaries within which the VISTA program may operate. Then, fast forward quite a few years to 1993, President Bill Clinton signed the National and Community Service Trust Act, which enabled both CNCS and the AmeriCorps programs to be established. The National Community Service Trust Act also merged several national service programs, including VISTA, to be part of AmeriCorps. Then, the 2009 Edward M. Kennedy Serve America Act reauthorized and expanded CNCS's national service programs. So you might be asking, how do VISTA projects get selected and why did we choose yours specifically? Well, your projects were specifically selected because they all demonstrate a substantial connection to VISTA's mission, objectives, and principles. As you know, VISTA's mission is to strengthen organizations that alleviate poverty through volunteering and the mobilization of resources. VISTA is the only AmeriCorps program focused exclusively on fighting poverty. VISTA also has 3 very specific objectives of the program. First, to strengthen local agencies and organizations to carry out the purpose of the program. Next, to encourage volunteer service at the local level, and to generate the commitment of private sector resources. As you can see, VISTA's objectives directly support building capacity. Finally, these are the core principles that shape everything AmeriCorps VISTA does: anti-poverty focus, community empowerment, capacity building, sustainable solutions. And don't forget, Your VISTA projects were selected because they demonstrate a strong connection to VISTA's core principles. Now that you know the core mission and principles of VISTA, let's review some key terms and definitions just to make sure that you're on the right page. Remember, this information is based on VISTA's authorizing legislation, and it's important to understand how each role is identified. So let's start with a few definitions. Project or VISTA project means a set of VISTA activities operated and overseen by a sponsor. The terms sponsor, project sponsor, VISTA sponsor, or VISTA project sponsor means a public agency or private nonprofit organization that receives assistance and is responsible for operating and overseeing a VISTA project. A public agency may be a federal, state, local, or tribal government. When we talk about project director or VISTA project director, what we're referring to is a staff person of the sponsor who has been assigned by the sponsor the overall responsibility for the management of the VISTA project. Project directors are responsible for executing all aspects of the project as outlined by the sponsor. The term supervisor is specifically an individual who directly supervises a VISTA member. This can be at the project level or at the site or subrecipient level. Project sponsors are responsible for ensuring that all member supervisors are trained. And it's important to note that some project directors are also supervisors. And it's also important to note that if you are a VISTA sponsor that has VISTA leaders at their project, VISTA leaders are not allowed to be supervisors of VISTA members. And finally, we talk about the CNCS State Office. CNCS has field staff working throughout the United States. There are CNCS state offices representing all 50 states, the District of Columbia, and U.S. territories. Some offices are responsible for multiple states and territories. So now that we've covered that, Mallory is going to talk a little bit about how the CNCS State Office can help with outreach, program development, technical assistance, monitoring, and evaluation in support of your VISTA project.
Okay, so by now I'm hoping you're familiar with your CNCS State Office. Let's do a quick check to see who you work with. Please type the name of your CNCS Program Officer in the chat panel. Okay, I see a few of my colleagues listed in the chat. Thank you very much. And it's totally okay if you don't currently know who your program officer is, but you will want to find out soon. In addition to contacting your direct program officer, you're able to send an email to the entire CNCS State Office using the two-letter state abbreviation followed by @cns.gov. For instance, in Kentucky, we are ky@cns.gov. As we said at the beginning, we know a bunch of folks on today's webinar are new to our work, so you may not have had a chance to connect with your CNCS State Office yet. As we discussed earlier, CNCS State Offices manage AmeriCorps VISTA as well as Senior Corps programs in their states. For VISTA projects, the CNCS State Office helps develop, support, and facilitate VISTA projects throughout their life cycle. State offices are here to sing your praises and help you through challenging times. We're available to help with member emergencies, troubleshooting, and policy questions. We can also support you by connecting you to resources and training tools for you and your members. One important note here. The CNCS State Office also plays an important role in approving candidates for VISTA service and removing members from service. As a reminder, only CNCS can approve members for service. The CNCS State Office carefully reviews all applicants that you recommend for VISTA service to ensure they're a good fit for the program. In a similar fashion, CNCS alone has the authority to remove a member from service. This is one of the reasons why it's critically important for you to update your CNCS state office early and often when it comes to member issues. We'll talk more about the importance of documenting member performance and actions later. Your VISTA members are critical and necessary for the success of your VISTA program. As you know, VISTA service is a 12-month full-time, 35 to 40 hours a week commitment where VISTA members provide indirect service to build capacity and sustainability with programs that work to alleviate poverty. A couple things to remember. VISTAs are members. They are not employees, interns, or volunteers of the sponsoring organization. VISTAs serve at the sponsoring agency. They don't work there. And VISTAs receive a modest, we emphasize the modest, living allowance that aligns with the community they are serving. Let's look at a few important topics for your members and those of us who support them. Members usually have questions on a variety of topics, and the topic of their questions often depend on how far into the service term they are. VISTA questions tend to fall under one of these categories: benefits, forms, end-of-service benefits, travel, and service letters. Members who are about to start service might have more questions about the amount of their living allowance, as well as when and how it's paid. Don't forget to fully explain member benefits and address some of these topics while interviewing those highly qualified candidates. For instance, some benefits such as living allowance are available to all VISTA members. Other benefits such as relocation assistance and child care are only available to some VISTA members and require the VISTA to take action in order to make use of the benefit. You'll want to be sure that all members carefully and correctly complete their W-4 and direct deposit information. Members should keep their direct deposit information updated, since they may change banks if they relocate for service, so they can receive their living allowance in any approved travel, like relocation, or emergency reimbursements. And remember that as a sponsor, you are required to reimburse members for any service-related travel that is required of them. For instance, if the VISTA assignment description outlines that the VISTA member will be traveling to community meetings and setting up partnerships, sponsors must reimburse members at the rate your organization uses for reimbursement. In addition to the required onboarding forms, VISTA candidates are required to accept the terms and conditions of VISTA service before they can start. This is an online course they take on the VISTA campus. Eric, since these are the highlights of important things VISTA sponsors should understand so they can assist their member, maybe you can walk us through a few more important topics for members.
That's a great idea, especially since newer members may have a lot of questions about how to request for federal forbearance on their educational student loans, or they might inquire how the end-of-service cash stipend differs from the education award. Some of them even have questions about the education award and how and when it can be used. One important note here, though, is it's very important for us as a VISTA program to distinguish between the living allowance from the stipend. The living allowance is the money VISTA members are paid every 2 weeks, whereas the stipend refers to the end-of-service cash stipend, which is a benefit that only comes at the end of service and only for those members who requested that end-of-service benefit. Members later in their service might need more information about how non-competitive eligibility, or NCE, works, or when they'll be able to access their verification of service letter. We're not going to go into detail about each of these, but this screen does give you a highlight of various topics that are of interest and useful to VISTA members. Remember that it is ultimately the VISTA members' responsibility to understand the details around these topics, including knowing where to find the benefits and details, which benefits may apply to them, and knowing what action they must take to utilize them. However, you will also want to know the details around them so that you can best support your VISTA members and inform candidates during recruitment who have questions about VISTA benefits. You can find details about all of these on the VISTA campus website. In terms of benefits, we also wanted to provide you links to great resources for these types of questions. Some of you may have already visited the VISTA Campus Benefits Hub, which is the first place to go for information about VISTA member benefits. The VISTA Member Handbook has very important information and guidance regarding these topics and quite a bit more. You can reference that as well as the VISTA Sponsor Handbook and the Resource Guide for links to more detailed guidance around things such as how much leave time VISTA members get and other policy-related items. And we also always tell our VISTA members directly that they do have the ability to contact the VISTA Member Support Unit, or we call them VMSU, if they have questions related to benefits that they cannot find the answers to on the VISTA campus. So we're going to take a very quick second to pause here to see if there are any questions that people have based on what we've covered. If there are questions, please type them in the chat now. We're only taking questions over the chat panel. But if you have questions based on what we've covered now, which could be about the CNCS website, maybe VISTA Campus, you may have a quick question about the CNCS State Office, or perhaps it's a question about member topics or member benefits. If so, quickly go ahead and type it in the chat. We have time for about 2 questions now, and then we'll go ahead and be able to answer more questions at the very end of the presentation once we go ahead and finish the rest of the discussion and commentary that we have to provide to you today. I do see a couple of people typing, so I'll wait a second, and here comes one question. And this question relates to something we asked earlier. What happens if a VISTA goes over their permitted personal and medical leave? So let me answer that, Alex, by saying, first, it is the responsibility of the VISTA supervisor and the direct VISTA supervisor and the VISTA member to keep track of their leave and attendance. Some sponsors keep track of it on paper, some do it electronically, but it is your responsibility to keep track of it. In the ideal situation, you would know when a VISTA member gets close to their 10 days of personal leave and 10 days of sick leave, so you can let them know they're getting close. If you do happen to know of a VISTA member who is getting very close to exhausting all their leave or who has already exhausted their leave, the best thing to do initially is to reach out to the CNCS State Office and let them know, because we don't want it to become an issue, but it could become an issue if the VISTA member has exhausted their 10 personal and 10 medical days and needs more time, or there's another issue. The state office would have to be involved. So definitely document it. Make sure you're keeping the VISTA member advised as to what's happening. And I'll quickly say that in very, very, very limited cases, if a member has exhausted all their personal and medical leave and they're still sick or having medical problems, the state office does sometimes have the limited availability to grant a couple of extra days of medical leave if absolutely necessary, but it would all have to be provided in writing to the state office. So, in summary, definitely get in touch with your state office as soon as they get close to their leave, just so that the state office is brought in early and hopefully not too late. Related to that is a question, if the VISTA calls them sick, is that something we record as leave? Yes, it is. And actually, I'm glad you mentioned that, because there's one other quick thing I should mention. So first I'll say, if the VISTA member calls in sick, that is why the VISTA program gives VISTAs 10 days of paid medical leave. And that 10 days of paid medical leave is if the VISTA member is sick or has a doctor's appointment. That's what that medical leave is for. So you would probably want to remind the VISTA, okay, if you're sick today, that's great, we hope you feel better. And then when they come in the office, just let them know, okay, we're going to track that as 1 day of your medical leave that's been used. And part of the reason for this is VISTAs only serve 365 days. I mean, they serve a full year, 365 days. So if you think about it, 10 days of personal leave and 10 days of sick leave is not a lot, but 1 year is also very short. So we do want to keep VISTAs on track. The last thing I'll mention about the leave that I forgot to mention earlier is with the 10 personal and sick days, VISTA members do observe the general holidays that your organization observes. So if your organization has Labor Day as a day off and the office is closed, that VISTA would also have the day off and would not have to count that holiday as leave because your organization is closed and it's observed by everyone at the organization. The only exception is if your organization is closed for an extended period of time of more than 2 days, for example, the winter holidays, or they shut down for a week or two. On a break like that, you would have to let the state office know, and you would either have to have the VISTA find a way to still serve during that time and get work done, or the VISTA would have to use personal leave during that time. The final question I will answer, and then we'll move on, and again, we will have plenty of time at the end to answer more questions. This question actually relates to relocation benefits, and the question is, what are the benefits available to members who move across the country? Fairly easy answer. So the VISTA program does offer a relocation benefit for VISTA members who move 50 miles or more from their home of record to the address of their service site. It does have to be 50 miles or more. And the benefit basically includes two things. One, it includes what we call a settling in allowance, which is $750 that's paid out, included in their first living allowance payment. And that amount they can use for anything, but it's ideally meant if they have to put down a deposit for a place or using it for moving expenses. That's what that $750 settling in allowance is. In addition to that, they get what we call a relocation travel allowance that is based on mileage. So it's based on mileage from their home of record to their service site at a specific VISTA mileage rate, and that is paid out to the VISTA member after they complete a reimbursement voucher and submit it back to the VISTA member support unit. So in summary, they get a settling in allowance of $750. In addition, they get the relocation travel allowance based on their mileage from their home of record to their service site. So thank you for those. I see a few more questions coming in that we'll answer towards the end, but we do want to make sure we have at least some time to go into a few more topics that are useful for you. So now we'll go ahead and take another look at our agenda to see what we've covered and what's coming up. So far, we've gotten through looking at where to start as a new project sponsor, the origins of the VISTA program, and some of the important details about the member positions. Next, we're going to transition and look at some of the core responsibilities that sponsors have. As a VISTA sponsor, you've joined VISTA sponsors from across the nation, as you saw in the earlier activity, people across the country, of fighting poverty in your community. Your role is critical to the success of the project, the members, and ultimately the impact on the poverty in your community. Every VISTA project is accountable for the responsibilities that we will outline, but each sponsor may assign these responsibilities differently and as appropriate within the organization and project. Remember that it is the sponsor's responsibility to ensure that all subsites are in compliance with VISTA policies and procedures. So let's take a look at core responsibilities relating to member management, since the VISTA programs and projects have to manage members. A successful VISTA project starts off with a strong and effective recruitment plan. At a minimum, this includes creating solid VISTA assignment descriptions, or VADs, which guide VISTA members in their service throughout the year. It includes drafting catchy and honest opportunity listings to announce your position and attract top quality candidates, as well as recruiting, screening, interviewing, and recommending the best candidate for a service in your VISTA project. It also includes providing an in-depth on-site orientation and training to all incoming VISTA members at the beginning of their service, and that includes the VISTA member orientation requirements as well as fingerprint instructions and deadline. This on-site orientation and training should also include opportunities for professional development and learning, since the VISTA member wants to accomplish the VAD, but likely also wants to grow personally and professionally in this year of service. Our really strong VISTA sponsors do all of this really well, and they find ways to integrate various aspects of the organization and the community with important things the VISTA member should know, as well as with the interests and skills of the VISTA member.
Here are a few more important aspects of AmeriCorps VISTA member management. It's probably no surprise that the best projects offer day-to-day supervision and support of their members. This includes confirming that members have the space, supplies, and equipment necessary to carry out their service, providing reasonable accommodations to members who request them based on different abilities, ensuring that members' activities are in line with their VADs, and even the best-run projects have member issues bubble up. So don't be disappointed if things get a little tricky. The important thing is to manage those member issues appropriately, and that means addressing member issues as they arise, informing the CNCS state office early of issues, documenting all discussions, tracking performance, and keeping on top of the situation. And again, remember, only CNCS may remove members from your project, and only CNCS may terminate members. So your documentation of member issues and discussing them with the CNCS state office is extremely important.
In terms of timekeeping, you want to develop a system to track your VISTA members' use of personal and medical leave because, again, it is your responsibility to monitor and to manage the use of the VISTA members' leave time. Remember, if you're looking for more information about the rules regarding when it's permissible for VISTA members to use their leave, you can visit the VISTA Member Handbook. In addition to the 10 personal and 10 medical days I briefly mentioned earlier, that VISTA members are entitled to most holidays observed by your organization, but longer seasonal breaks must be communicated with your state office and discussed about possible opportunities. For data management, you want to make sure that you have your member track what they accomplish, because this will certainly help you ensure that you have accurate data when it's time to report on performance measure targets, and it'll also help the VISTA member when they look towards professional development and future opportunities to think about what they've accomplished. You may want to do what some people have done. Consider creating a procedure manual or a resource to keep track of steps that you or your VISTA members take to develop and send out communications, update an online website or flyer, and more. These elements are all part of sustainability, which we know is essential to the VISTA program, as you and your VISTA members identify things that you can do to keep the project going well into the future. And again, I know we talk about this a lot, but we really want you to take heed and use this resource. In the handouts panel, there's the VISTA Sponsor Resource Guide, a comprehensive list of resources to help you successfully manage VISTA members. In addition to what we mentioned earlier related to performance and member management, the following activities are allowed, but they must be approved in advance. So, with prior approval by the sponsor and the CNCS state office, AmeriCorps VISTA members are allowed teleservice, which is serving at a location other than their project site for limited durations. They're allowed to hold outside employment, and there are specific rules around that. And they are allowed to attend educational courses. Please note that even though these activities are allowed, the VISTA member must request this through the project director and then have it approved through the CNCS state office.
At the CNCS state office, we're always thinking about what's best for the project. So the CNCS state office has the ability to deny requests that may interfere with the VISTA member's service or interfere with the project. To be on the safe side, you should consult with your CNCS state office if any changes are made that impact or will impact the project, subsites, or members. This could mean a change with project personnel and supervision of members, or it could mean that due to emerging community needs, a VAD must be tweaked to better support alleviating poverty in your community. Regardless, it's always a good idea to check in with your CNCS state office, and the sooner we know about these shifts, the more support that we'll be able to give.
So we're going to take a look at some of your core responsibilities in adhering to restrictions on what can be done during VISTA service. Prior to starting, VISTA members must complete the online VISTA Terms and Conditions course that details what's provided to and allowed by VISTA members during service. If a VISTA member violates any one of the terms or conditions, you will need to contact your CNCS state office immediately. Different violations have different repercussions, and for the protection of the project and any other members on board, it's critical that you act promptly. In terms of criminal activity, VISTA members and VISTA sponsors must report any criminal activity that occurs while in service, and that must be reported to their CNCS state office. In terms of religious activity, engaging in religious instruction, conducting worship services, or engaging in any form of proselytizing during service time is prohibited. So let's briefly talk about the prohibited political activity. Engaging in partisan political activities while in service, such as engaging in fundraising for a partisan political campaign at any time, or advertising oneself as a VISTA while engaging in partisan political activity, are all prohibited. The Hatch Act is a federal law that was first enacted in 1939. VISTA members are considered federal employees for a very few limited purposes, including the Hatch Act. The Hatch Act ensures that all federal employees and VISTA members do not participate in political activity prohibited under the Hatch Act. Keep in mind, because this question does come up sometimes, VISTA members also cannot be involved in voter registration as part of their VISTA service. They can do it if it's not part of VISTA service, though, and would just need to do it on their own time, not wearing VISTA gear, and not being identified as a VISTA member. In general, VISTAs cannot engage in political activity, religious activity, lobbying, or union organizing as part of the service or while perceived to be a VISTA. They certainly can go to rallies or attend church services on their own non-VISTA time, but they cannot engage in either type of activity while serving or while identifying as a VISTA member. Also, the Hatch Act prohibits VISTA members from fundraising or soliciting money for a partisan political campaign at any time during their year of service, and that's prohibited whether it's during their service hours or on their own time. However, they may personally decide to donate to a partisan political campaign.
Moving on to supplanting staff, members shall not perform duties that should be done or are typically done by paid staff or contractors. This would be a major red flag because VISTA members are placed at organizations not to take the place of staff, but to be catalysts for change by building capacity and strengthening organizations with the goal of eradicating poverty. And with nepotism, we ask that you avoid the actual or appearance of favoritism in the operation of a VISTA placement. A VISTA member cannot be placed or assigned to a VISTA project site if the VISTA member is in the immediate family or is a close relative of a project site staff member, or vice versa. For direct service, the role of VISTA is building capacity to bring communities out of poverty, and so members do not perform direct service activities except if needed during training or if doing so is merely incidental to performing their VAD indirect service duties. For instance, a member might design a school curriculum, but they should not be the one regularly teaching children with that curriculum. Rather, they could recruit volunteers for that purpose. If you'd like more information or a full description of prohibited activities, please visit Chapter 15 of the Member Handbook. Next, let's dive into core responsibilities for project management. It's important to know that all sponsors must follow the requirements and policies set forth in the Memorandum of Agreement. Your organization has entered into a legal agreement with CNCS. All projects must also have an anti-poverty focus. So all project activities, from the application to the VISTA assignment description, should tie back to alleviating poverty in your community. And if your project is already underway, you might be responsible for the project continuation. Be sure to submit a continuation application 90 days before expiration of the Memorandum of Agreement. Let's take another moment for a quick check-in with everyone. Please take a minute to type your answer in the chat panel. What is your project start date? Okay, thank you. I see a couple upcoming start dates listed. That's excellent. And as with our question about the name of your program officer earlier, depending on when you started with your VISTA project, you might not know your exact project start date yet, and that is okay.
If your VISTA project happens to operate at more than one location or service site, you are required to have a memorandum of understanding with each of your sub-sites or multi-site sponsors, and you need to encourage partnership development. Depending on your agreement with CNCS, you might also be responsible for activities related to cost share. If you do have questions about your agreement with CNCS, or if you're not sure if you have cost share, you can access information in eGrants or talk to your CNCS state office. Finally, it's good to know that everyone is responsible for reporting in some way, so let's briefly dive into a little bit of information about reporting requirements.
There are also core responsibilities for reporting. Each VISTA project submits a set of reports to help CNCS review project progress. The information you provide in these reports demonstrate your project's impact, demonstrate resource management, and allows us to provide you better technical assistance. Since these are important things to know, Eric and I will talk through a variety of required reports. As we start, it's good to know that your state office will provide all deadlines for your reports, and you'll be able to find instructions in the sponsor resource guide. Let's walk through the main reports required from VISTA sponsors. All projects are required to submit Sponsor Verification Forms, or SVF, VISTA Project Progress Reports, or the PPR, VISTA Progress Report Supplement, or the VPRS, and Future Plans Forms, FPS. Only projects that have a program or support grant have to submit a Federal Financial Report, or the FFR. If you have questions about the type of grant you have with CNCS, access your agreement in eGrants or talk to your CNCS state office. Every 2 weeks, you will submit a sponsor verification form. This helps CNCS track which members are still actively serving at your project so we can prevent member overpayment. This information also ties in directly to VISTA member payroll for standard VISTA projects. Please be sure to set reminders for this report. If you're going to be out of the office, determine who's going to submit this report on your behalf. This function must be completed by a staff member, and please don't delegate it to another AmeriCorps member, an intern, or a volunteer. You're also required to submit Project Progress Reports, or PPRs. For the first year of your project, these are generally completed on a quarterly basis. The reports should build on each other. Check with your CNCS state office and in eGrants for more details on due dates, depending on your project year, because after your second year, progress reports are typically semi-annual. That transition is at the discretion of your CNCS state office. The progress report information will be part of your project's official record and will be used to evaluate a project's continuation. If you have questions on what you should include, I'll refer you to the PPR instructions in the VISTA Sponsor Resource Guide. If you're a project with multiple sites, you'll need to establish a way to aggregate information about members serving at those sites. Don't wait until your progress report is due to ask a question or to share a member's impact. We encourage you to share information with your CNCS state office as it happens. That way, our state offices can help share your successes and coach you through your challenges as they come.
The next report that we'll mention is the VISTA Progress Report Supplement, or VPRS. We know there's a lot of acronyms, so just bear with us. The VPRS is an annual report and tracks demographic information for your project. This report is typically due late in the calendar year and it's based on our agency's fiscal year, which is October 1st of one year through September 30th of the next year. This means that you will likely have to track information with your members on a monthly basis to accurately submit your report, and I'll add in that sometimes tracking information from your members on a monthly basis helps it to make it more manageable for you and for them so that they're not reporting too frequently, but they're gathering all the information that they've put together and helping you put together your master report. You can find instructions on how to complete this report in the VISTA Sponsor Resource Guide. Transitioning to another topic, you must complete a Future Plans Form, or FPF, for every member at the end of their term of service. The Future Plans Form unlocks for the member in their my.americorps.gov account 90 days prior to their end of service. You will submit Part A, the VISTA member will complete Part A before they end service. Then you will submit Part B, which evaluates the VISTA member's service. We do recommend that you coordinate with the member's supervisor if you're not the one directly supervising this individual. The member then has the opportunity to review your comments, so for that reason, we recommend that you host an exit interview so that the member is aware of what you're entering for the review, and you might be able to get feedback on your project for the next VISTA that comes in. Once the VISTA completes Part A and you complete Part B, it then comes to the CNCS State Office for review. In terms of the Federal Financial Report, or FFR, for program and support grants, there is additional reporting requirements such as the FFR. Make sure that you connect with your CNCS State Office for more information on what's required of your specific grant. And be sure to loop in the fiscal staff at your organization as appropriate. If you do not have a program or support grant, you don't need to worry about this report. And finally, if you have a cost share agreement, and most people who have a cost share agreement know, cost share invoices are payable upon receipt. You will receive them either on a biweekly or a monthly basis in e-grants, depending on your agreement.
I'd like to share a few key tips about these reports and forms. We recommend you complete these forms early in the process. It can help you manage member recruitment and ties in directly to member and alumni benefits, specifically accessing the Education Award. For example, if a member wants to re-enroll or extend their service, then you should document how they successfully supported your project and accomplished activities on their VAD and rate them accordingly. This will help us at the CNCS State Office evaluate your and their request and compare it to our budget. If a member needs to leave their service early or terminate their service, the CNCS State Office can unlock the Future Plans Form. However, the request to release this form should not be the CNCS State Office's first notification that the member will be terminating their service. Please bring the CNCS State Office into the conversation early so that we can help you troubleshoot any potential issues. I know this is a lot of information to absorb, so again, if you have questions, reach out to your CNCS State Office. We are here to help. You've heard us talk about working with your CNCS State Office quite a bit already. Another core responsibility is to share the good, the bad, and the ugly with your CNCS State Office. By communicating openly and early, you position us to best support you. There are some things that the CNCS State Office needs to hear about promptly, rather than when your next progress report is submitted. Please be sure to alert your CNCS State Office of major accomplishments and events, such as new grant awards or visits from elected officials and press coverage, as they happen rather than waiting for the next progress report. Your CNCS State Office will want to hear about and spread the word about your success. Also, notify us promptly of major emergencies, like a member hospitalization or arrest, a member going AWOL, or a member's early termination, as well as any acute or chronic challenges with members, such as performance or conduct issues. Your CNCS state office is here to support you and needs to be up to date on your project status in order to do that effectively. Communicate with us about proposed changes to your project goals and member activities. In other words, any changes to the VISTA assignment description, as well as shifts in staff, supervision, or organization status.
You will also want to share information about your VISTA project, of course, with your communities and networks. Be sure to acknowledge the resources that you receive by identifying AmeriCorps VISTA members as such and listing AmeriCorps VISTA as a funder of your organization. You will want to list AmeriCorps VISTA in your materials, on your websites, and mention the program in verbal conversations about your project. Keep your communities and networks in the loop about your VISTA project, not just to spread the word on the capacity that you're building, but also to cultivate engagement and promote opportunities to serve with your organization. So we're still talking about core responsibilities, but now we want to focus specifically on regulatory compliance. As a VISTA sponsor, it is your responsibility to comply with all regulations and requirements of the VISTA program. CNCS staff conduct monitoring and compliance activities throughout the life of your project. And since AmeriCorps VISTA is a federal program, and like anything that's supported by taxpayer funds, we need to make sure that the program is well run, doing what it's supposed to, and spending money wisely.
CNCS staff ensure compliance by reviewing VADs to make sure they're appropriate for VISTA service and free from non-approved activities. CNCS staff may also conduct site visits and compliance monitoring visits. Site visits are generally conducted by CNCS staff. Occasionally, headquarters personnel will attend as well. They may be informational in nature in order to provide technical assistance, or they might be for general project monitoring. Compliance monitoring visits are always scheduled in advance and they are structured. They will probably include interviews with project staff, VISTA members, advisory council members, and community members or beneficiaries. They will include a review of documentation and procedures. And there's usually a letter outlining conclusions that is shared after. CNCS conducts these visits to make sure that the grantees are following the rules. These visits also serve to provide support to VISTA sponsoring organizations. You'll see that VISTA members also have a role when it comes to regulatory compliance. It's important to know that CNCS instructs VISTA members who feel they're being asked to do things that are not appropriate for their service to first talk about it with their supervisor. From there, they can talk with the CNCS state office. If the issue isn't resolved, or if they want to remain anonymous and they believe the matter relates to fraud, waste, or abuse, they can contact the CNCS Office of Inspector General. If a VISTA member believes they have been subject to illegal discrimination related to their VISTA service, they should immediately contact the CNCS Equal Opportunity Program, which will also be covered a little bit later. Remember to report concerns to your CNCS state office. And we are here to help develop, manage, and monitor VISTA projects, support you in managing your project and your VISTA members, assist with member emergencies, challenging situations, and questions of policy, and support you by connecting you to resources. We talked about prohibited activities a bit earlier in our presentation. Now let's review a few important points. VISTA members should focus on what's outlined in the VISTA assignment description, which should tie directly to the overall project plan that was approved by CNCS. Your VISTA service should be to build capacity, not undertake activities that can be construed as direct service. If VISTA members are being asked to take over the work of staff, say someone who left the organization, that's replacing staff, and it's not allowed. Or if a VISTA member is mostly doing administrative support for someone else, that's also not appropriate work for a VISTA member.
So we've covered a lot today. We've looked at the big picture of national service. We've talked through some of the major elements of VISTA responsibilities. And now we're going to move on to some brief keys to success. To ensure that you start off on the right foot, we're going to share some member and project management keys to success to help you manage your VISTA project. So here are some recommendations for really strong VISTA member management. It should be no surprise by now that ongoing communication with your CNCS state office is not only critical, but essential in helping you have an effective relationship. Make sure that they're aware of any challenges you have, as well as any positive things that happen. In terms of recruitment, be sure to start early and be proactive. Take time to locate members that are a good fit, know the member benefits, understand what it really means to live on the living allowance, and invest time drafting compelling opportunity listings to really hook the right candidate. Don't forget to offer professional development and support because you really want to keep your VISTA member motivated and engaged, and develop a strong on-site orientation and training. This is absolutely essential for retaining your VISTA members. For support and supervision, whether you are the direct supervisor or not, it's important to address issues early on, track time and attendance, avoid direct service and other prohibited activities, and work with your CNCS state office if there's any requests for outside employment, teleservice, or direct service. If your VISTA project has a VISTA leader, understand the role of the VISTA leader because this person is not a supervisor, but you'll want to utilize and support them to help support your VISTA members. Make sure, especially when you start off with having VISTA members, schedule and maintain regular meetings with VISTA supervisors, and sometimes we suggest at least starting off with a once-a-week meeting, 30 minutes long. We call it the 10-10 model. It's actually not our model, but we like to use it. And basically, it's the first 10 minutes is dedicated to the VISTA members speaking and providing their feedback and questions. The next 10 minutes is focused on you as their supervisor speaking, responding, and giving your feedback. And then the final 10 minutes is for clarifications, additional questions, and next steps. That allows the VISTA to have their time, you to have your time, and additional time if it goes over. And then also work hard to retain and motivate your members by showing appreciation and recognition of them and their work. Also, even though it might be early to think about it, think carefully about the close of service. You'll definitely want to help your members prepare for their next steps once service is complete, because this not only helps them transition out of service effectively, but it really helps you get the ball rolling and start planning for the next VISTA member and beginning to transition activities to another VISTA member, ultimately for the organization's sustainability. And in terms of success, here's some of the top tips for success related to project management. Again, everyone knows what's at the top of the list: communication with the CNCS state office. Tell them the good and the bad before it gets ugly. But also make sure to operate your projects in accordance with applicable laws, regulations, policies, certifications, and assurances. Make sure your project utilizes the best efforts to accomplish the goals set out for the AmeriCorps VISTA members in the project application. And also be sure to operate your projects in consultation with and involving the people of the communities to be served in planning, developing, and implementing the project. Like all federal agencies, CNCS has an Inspector General, whose office is responsible for preventing and detecting waste, fraud, and abuse. If you happen to encounter any issues with your project, address them at the sponsor level, and of course, if necessary or if desired, with your CNCS state office. If the issues are not resolved, or if you want to remain anonymous, you may contact the Office of Inspector General as you see on the screen. The Office of Inspector General takes all allegations seriously and conducts thorough investigations to ensure compliance with federal regulations and the terms of the VISTA program. VISTA members are protected by VISTA and CNCS from being subjected to discrimination or harassment, but you as the supervisor and the sponsor also have an obligation to make sure that you do not subject anyone to discrimination or harassment. This applies to everyone you come in contact with, including VISTA members, clients, volunteers, and employees at your service site. CNCS's Equal Opportunity Office, or EOP, is responsible for and charged with reviewing and processing discrimination complaints filed by CNCS service members, including VISTA members. And with that, Mallory is going to cover important next steps as you continue through your VISTA sponsor orientation and work to create and maintain a well-run VISTA program.
Thanks, Eric. We hope today's presentation has given you a good sense of the role of the VISTA sponsor and a sense of where to go to learn more. Let's review next steps as we start to wrap up today. Following this webinar, please email your CNCS state office that you completed this session. Your CNCS state office will be able to answer your project-specific questions and can review next steps as you continue to learn about VISTA, your project, and your roles and responsibilities. If you are a sub-site supervisor, you will receive project-specific training from your project director. Remember that this webinar is just one part of the entire VISTA sponsor orientation. Make sure you go back to the VISTA sponsor orientation section of the VISTA campus and look at the orientation checklist to complete the remaining items. As you prepare to manage a VISTA project, take time to review the resources that have already been shared with you and become familiar with the VISTA campus. You'll find many helpful resources there. Finally, be sure to pursue other training as directed by the VISTA program and by your CNCS state office.
Before we get to the questions and answers, and I see a few more coming in, we really do appreciate the feedback that you provide on the webinar and other things related to VISTA, because we truly value your input and suggestions. If you don't automatically see the evaluation appear on your computer, you can access the survey in the links panel of this webinar on the screen. You'll see right now the survey link has been posted on top of the handouts panel. A little bit later we'll make the handouts panel available to you if you did not download anything, but the survey link is available for you. We also want to mention the recording of today's presentation will be posted on the VISTA campus in about 7 to 10 days from now on the VISTA campus website under the VISTA Sponsor Orientation Materials page. While you're hopefully completing the survey, and it's a pretty short survey, but again, we truly appreciate your feedback, we'd like to take some time for questions and answers. Again, we talked about if you have questions, you can continue to post them in the chat panel, and we'll be answering those in just a minute. We also know that some of you may be on the phone and may have a verbal question, so I'll turn it over to our partners at LSI to provide instructions on how you can verbally ask a question by phone.
Thanks, Eric. If you dialed into the webinar or had Adobe Connect call you back, you can ask questions using your phone. To ask your question over the phone line, press *# and you'll be placed into the queue. When it's your turn to ask your question, you'll hear the prompt, "Go ahead, caller." Then you may proceed with your question. Once again, to ask a question over the phone line, press *# to be placed into the queue.
Thank you for that, and we'll continue as we see if there's questions that come in over the phone. One of the questions that I see came in, and thank you for bringing this up, Emily, is a question about sometimes VISTA members have mentioned going to an in-person trip, and in this case it's to Ohio, and I think the question is just, could you provide more information on that? So I will answer it in perhaps a roundabout fashion, but I will answer it, I promise. So the VISTA program does, when VISTA members start, you probably know they go through what we call a VISTA member orientation, which is part virtual through the VISTA program at VISTA headquarters, and part in person at your site, where they go through a series of information, a series of webinars, which segue into the on-site orientation and training that you conduct at your service site. Then, thankfully in the past few months, the VISTA program has had the ability to start slowly and continue into the future, offering the opportunity for in-person, in-service trainings. These trainings are typically offered to VISTA members who are in months 2 to 5 of their service, because we found out that if If you're too early in your service in the first month, it's too soon to have the training. If you're in your 7th or 8th month, it's a little bit too late to get the information. So we provide these in-service trainings for VISTA members who are 2 to 5 months into their service in a couple of different regions around the country. Now I will mention, in this specific case, we as the VISTA program have not, and at least in the foreseeable future, do not have any specific in-service trainings in person in the state of Ohio. So in this example, that in-person training may be perhaps some VISTA sponsors are larger intermediaries, so you could be a supervisor at a sub-site, and it might be that the intermediary or the larger organization is having a localized or regionalized orientation and training of their own. So I would say in that case, check with your intermediary or someone else who might manage the VISTA project, but the VISTA program does have its own separate possibility for in-person, in-service trainings in months 2 to 5 of a VISTA member service. If there's additional questions or comments on that, feel free to post that in the chat because I want to make sure to answer it as best as I can. The next question is a great question. Can husband and wife serve as VISTAs? That is a very wonderful question, and I will try to answer it in a way that makes sense. So the answer is yes, but it depends, and I really don't like that phrase depends because everything depends on something else that depends on something else, right? But it depends in the sense that if the question is can a husband and wife serve as VISTAs at the same VISTA sponsoring organization, it really is up to the sponsoring organization because it's the sponsoring organization that ideally recruits, selects, and interviews the VISTA members and the VISTA applicants. So if the VISTA sponsor interviews a husband and wife team separately or together and decides they want them, it is certainly possible. It's rare, but it is possible. So certainly consider if that could be a problem for your organization or an opportunity, but yes, it should not be a problem for a husband and wife to serve as VISTA members at the same organization. There was another question that came in that I think Mallory answered, but Mallory, I might have you verbally provide information if there's any additional information that you have on it, and it was related to the reports and e-grants, and now I can't find where it was. So maybe you happen to remember what it was. I'm scrolling through the chat now.
Yeah, I think Emily had asked if there was a specific format for the PPRs and for the VPRS.
Yeah.
And the answer is yes, there is a specific format. And if you would like to see what that format is, you can log into your account on eGrants. And those reports should already be created for you and should be available. The VPRS is a report that only comes out once a year. So if your project is a new project, you may not be able to see that quite yet. That tends to come out towards the end of the calendar year. But if your project has been in existence for some time, you may be able to access previous VPRS reports. Hopefully that is helpful. But yes, there is a specific format, and I would encourage you to log into your eGrants account to understand what that format is, so that will help you in collecting data from your VISTA members while they are serving.
Great answer. Thank you, Mallory. And that additional detail is very helpful, especially because we know a lot of sponsors have questions and just thoughts about the reports and how they work and when they're due. So that's extremely useful. I'm seeing no questions on the phone. What we will do is we'll remove the survey link pod so that you can re-access the handouts panel if there's anyone who still has to download any handouts. Thank you to LSI. They posted the survey link in the chat, so if you still haven't gotten a chance to quickly do this survey, you can access that link in the chat panel. We still have just a few more minutes if there are any burning questions. We know some of you might be new and perhaps don't know what questions to ask yet, but now's your chance to quickly get information from VISTA headquarters, from CNCF State Office about anything related to VISTA. We'll be on for another 2 or 3 minutes to quickly answer any questions that you might have. Scrolling through the chat, I think the only other question that came in that was also about the teleservice is what is the policy around teleservice. So the specific details are in the VISTA member handbook, but just in general, the VISTA program does allow the VISTA program does allow each VISTA member to do teleservice up to 2 days per pay period. As you know, with the VISTA program, the pay period is 2 weeks or 14 calendar days. So if you do the math, that would be technically on average teleserving up to 1 day a week. And I mentioned, you might have seen in the chat, that certainly if you are interested in teleservice for your VISTA member, or if your VISTA member requests it, it's certainly something to consider, but just think about for your organization how it will impact them, because especially if a VISTA member relocates, they're likely moving to a new community. Most VISTAs only serve 5 days a week. Most organizations are only open 5 days a week. So you figure if a VISTA member does teleserve 1 day a week, that's 1 out of 5 days, 20% of their service that they're not on site, potentially not interacting with community members. Not necessarily a bad thing, but you do want to think about that in relation to how other people at your site might telework or handle situations like that, but also how you can develop relationships with your VISTA member. You can certainly still do that virtually and using technology, but it's just a different dynamic. So we just ask that whether it's related to teleservice or outside employment or any of these other things, just factor those in when you have meetings with your VISTA members, especially if you happen to notice that there's some issues occurring and your VISTA member is coming in late or they seem like they're not really active. It's okay to have a conversation and just ask how they're doing. And if you know that they're working a part-time job, you might want to just check in and ask how that's going. You don't want to pry into their personal life, of course, but the VISTA service must come first. So if there's ever a conflict with outside employment or outside educational courses, if they keep showing up late because they're working too much at their other job, that's an issue. So definitely just sit down and have a conversation with your VISTAs. And as Mallory and I said, always be in touch with your CNCS state office, because it's much better to be proactive about something and get guidance on a potential issue than wait until it escalates into a huge issue and we wonder why you didn't let us know about that before. So I'll give you maybe 30 more seconds to see. I don't see any other questions coming in the chat panel, which either means we were so fabulous we answered all your questions, or more likely that you're still processing and probably have specific questions for your CNCS state program officer. Frida, I will put my email in here, so if you have questions about anything related to your comment, feel free to email me and I can get that information to you. And with that, what we'll do is we'll go ahead and move on to the last couple of slides. Again, we know we mentioned earlier that we had an acronym list available for you, so if you haven't done it already, now's the time you can access the answers to the acronym panel just to quickly check and see how you did. You might have gotten them all because we gave you the answers throughout the webinar. You might have missed some, but again, we recommend that you download these just because these acronyms and quite a few more you'll hear quite frequently throughout the VISTA program, and it helps for you to either have this separate list or for you to add these to another list that you have, just so that when someone says, oh, have you completed the FPS, you actually know what we're talking about. Remember, you can keep this answer sheet accessible because it'll help you get to know the CNCS structure, our staff, and the VISTA project requirements. And you may also get questions from VISTA members, so you will want to be well informed. So finally, taking the last look at the agenda, we've accomplished everything so far, from where to start to the Q&A. Hopefully our discussion has helped you at least get a starting point as you jump into your new role as VISTA sponsor. Again, if you do have any questions about AmeriCorps VISTA, if it's about benefits or logistical matters, the best first point of contact is the VISTA campus, either the VISTA member handbook, the VISTA sponsor handbook, or the VISTA benefits page. If that question is not answered, or if you need more detail, clarification, or a specific person to talk to, your first and best point of contact is your CNCS state program officer. So let me say thank you, first of all, especially to my fabulous co-presenter Mallory, who does great work in her state office and representing the state offices and the regional offices all around the country. Great thanks to you. Thank you to Barbara Reynolds for assisting with some of the technology, and of course our partners at LSI for managing the technology and making sure it went smoothly without a hitch. We also, of course, want to thank you because we know that you're not just doing your job, you're also doing the job of a VISTA supervisor, VISTA project director, VISTA, everything related to VISTA. And just know from myself, from Mallory, from Barbara, from all of us here at CNCS, your work makes a huge difference to the VISTA program, to your VISTA members, to your leaders, and to your community. So thank you, thank you, thank you. This concludes our session. Make sure you have an amazing day. Happy Thursday. And thank you for being part of AmeriCorps VISTA.